or my next question, to be about Lafayette. And so I thought I would read a couple of Facebook posts that certain students who are critical of you read in the lead up to this event and just ask you to respond to them.
Okay.
So this is a student writing, Lafayette College, I am utterly disappointed that you're allowing this to take place on our campus. I thought we went through this last semester with Roaming Millennial. Inviting hateful speakers who make wildly unsubstantiated claims is not going to fly with the student body. I get it. The Mill Series events are private and not endorsed by the college, but you absolutely have the power to make a statement on this. The fact that you're not is an embarrassment to our community. If you believe this man is a legitimate source of knowledge because he has a degree in clinical psychology, feel free to ask our psychology department faculty and counseling center staff about the validity of his claims. I'm certain they would not endorse this speaker. Do better, in all caps. For those of you unfamiliar, Jordan Peterson is known for denouncing the Me Too movement, claiming that women are in no way marginalized in the West, arguing against the existence of gender-neutral pronouns, arguing against gun control in the U.S., and claiming that identity politics and social justice movements are part of a devious Marxist agenda. And then another student responded, and this is briefer. College conservatives know that if they bring in a speaker who is willing to blatantly insult a portion of the audience, and the libs get angry enough about this for good reason, then they may get an op-ed written about them in the New York Times. As a result, there are a whole group of hacks, like Milo and Peterson, who get famous and invited purely for their promise to misgender trans students and advocate provocative but ultimately toothless arguments about social Darwinist race theory. What I'm saying is that you have every right to be pissed. Jordan Peterson is a harmful moron, but know that you being pissed is also 100% at the point of why he was invited. He's not a conservative. He's just a guy who's mildly racist enough to offend college liberals and therefore secure wins for the cultural right.
Comparatively mild stuff. It's the chattering buzz of ideologically possessed demons. So there's nothing in it that's not entirely predictable. That's one of the things you notice when you're talking to people. If you want to find out whether the person is there or the ideology is there, you listen to see if you're hearing anything that someone else of the same ideological mindset couldn't have told you. You know, like I've had thousands of conversations with people because I've spent 20 years as a clinical psychologist. And one of the things I've learned about people is that they're unbelievably interesting. If you get someone to sit down and you move past the superficial, which you can actually do quite rapidly, they'll tell you all sorts of things that only they know that are unbelievably enlightening about their own peculiar problems, about the way they look at the world, about their idiosyncratic familial dynamics, like just fascinating personal stuff. It's the stuff of great novels, you know, and this is ordinary people. I don't really think there is an ordinary person exactly. There's the facade of ordinariness, but behind that, people are very rarely ordinary. And so the conversations are almost instantaneously fascinating. And one of the guidelines that I used in my clinical practice constantly was, like, I had this sense, I probably learned this mostly from Carl Rogers, was that if the conversation wasn't really interesting, then we weren't doing anything that was therapeutically useful. But all of the interesting elements of it were very, very personal. And so to replace this, and I learned this mostly from Alexander Solzhenitsyn in his detailed analysis of what I would call ideological possession, he talked about people he met in the Gulag camps who were under the sway of rigid communist orthodoxy, and noted very clearly that it was like there was a crank in some sense on the side of their head, and you could just crank the crank and out would come the ideological dogma, and it's all entirely predictable. And people who are in a situation like that don't understand that they're possessed by an idea, right? Carl Jung said people don't have ideas, ideas have people. And it's like, so there's nothing in that that's anything other than exactly what you would predict. And then there's a deeper issue too, and this is one that I think has bedeviled me ever since I made my initial videos, which is it's impossible for those on the radical left to admit that anyone who opposes what they're doing might be reasonable, because what that would mean would be that you could be reasonable and oppose the radical left, and that would imply that what the radical left was doing wasn't reasonable. And so instead of dealing with the fact that I actually happen to be quite reasonable, the attempt is to assume that anyone who objects must be part of the radical right. It's like, well, actually, no. There's lots of space between the radical left and the radical right. There's the moderate, reasonable left, for example, and then there's the center, and then there's the moderate, reasonable right, and then there's the far right, and then there's the extreme right. All of that exists in opposition to the radical left, but it's very convenient for the radicals on the left to say, oh, well, you don't buy our doctrine, and then to immediately make the presupposition that you must be the most heinous example of that entire array of potential objection. What do you think?
Happy Halloween, Ben.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I have an issue with your stance on abortion.
Okay.
Right. So you define life as starting at conception through biology, pretty much. But I think you take the stance that life is intrinsically valuable because it's life. And that's where I disagree. I think there's two things that make life valuable. I think consciousness, the ability to experience pain, senses and stuff like that, and personal identity. In particular, psychological continuity identity. So the fact that we have memories, we have relationships, people have relationships to us. I think those are
Do you need both of those, or is it an either or? I just want to clarify your position.
Either or.
Okay, so if it's either or, then people with Alzheimer's have real continuity problems, you can't kill them.
No, because people still have relationships with them though, right? So like just because you have like...
I mean, you have a relationship with them, but with people with advanced stage Alzheimer's, they really don't have a relationship.
Okay, but for the sake of example, like let's say someone dies, right? The family gets to decide what you do with the body. Because I know what you say. When you say, someone says, oh, it's just consciousness, and then they're brain dead, you say, well, can you stab them? No, you can't. Because that's the family's decision what to do with the body. It's the person's decision what they want to do.
So if the family decides to stab them, it's okay to stab the
when they're brain dead? Yeah, if they want to...
No, not brain dead. Let's say that you're comatose for a specifically and predictably short period of time, say 9 months.
Say now, well, what is the person... Okay, yeah. No. So I would say on the legal grounds, it would depend if what the person put in their will. If the person has made clear statements like, hey, don't pull the plug on 9 months, then don't do that. Because I think the first choice is...
Right, but let's say the person has not made such clear statements. Say the person can't make such clear statements.
So and he's just in a complete coma?
Let's say the person has not drawn up a living will or had conversations like this. They're in a car crash, they get in a coma, you know that in 9 months they're going to come out of the coma, and they're going to be fine. Are you allowed to stab? Can the family say, you know what, these 9 months, stab the dude.
Wait, so they're fine, so they're going to get their memories back?
Let's say they don't get their memories back.
Then I would say then that person is dead. And yeah, if the family wants to pull the plug, that's fine. I would have no problem with that, yeah. No, I would have no problem with that. Because that person is dead.
You're getting into some dicey territory, dude.
No, I think that person is dead. Right? And that's the best way to define life, is personal identity and consciousness. That's what makes life valuable.
Right, so I think that, again, if you were to say both, that's too much. And if you were even to say either, I don't think either one of those legs stands on its own. Okay, because what you really mean, this is the thing about having a baby. It's a process of development. Right? And this is the point that I'm making. There's a period in this human life when that child does not have, or fetus or embryo, whatever you want to call it, when this living thing does not have consciousness and does not have a sense of identity. But in 9 months, it will have consciousness.
Well,
and even then, by the way,
babies
don't have a sense of identity for at least a certain number of months after they're born. I mean,
the babies can recognize their parents' voices after they're born.
That's not a sense of identity. Rats can.
No. I would say it is, because it's a form of memory, though, right? And that's what I was using.
So are you a Jainist? Because animals also have consciousness.
No. I would say that killing animals is wrong. You have no problem with that.
So just to get this straight. Killing Fluffy the hamster, deeply wrong. Killing a dude who's going to wake up from a coma in 9 months with memory problems, totally cool. Okay, I mean, that's fine. You can have that position. I'm just not going to put you in charge of the NHS.